Welcome back. Leaders from around the world are here at the United Nations to talk about local issues and global challenges. But how does the UN simplify all these viewpoints into a coherent, unified message? That's my conversation with Melissa Fleming, Head of UN Global Communications. Melissa, thanks so much for joining us. You've come to this job at a time when there appears to be a tendency among many countries in the world, the United States included, to reject the whole idea, the concept of multilateralism. And that is the concept upon which this organization was built. So how do you, as Undersecretary for Communications, make sure that the world knows about the UN and the role it plays?
Well, communications is fundamental, and I do believe there is a growing hunger out there in the general public, especially among young people, to see that the big issues of our times that cross international borders, that have nothing to do with nationalism, that have an impact on us all, that there is a body out there that is responsible for bringing countries together, not only countries though, bringing actors together to be a force for a greater good. So the UN, I believe, at this time of more divisiveness, more nationalism, maybe more populism, has more relevance than ever before, and I do believe that there is a real hunger for this kind of multilateral activity that is working to make our world a better place.
That must be a challenge, mustn't it, conveying the message that the UN is relevant?
Well, I think one shouldn't just say the UN is relevant. I think what we need to do is show why we are relevant, and it's not just here in New York. I mean, we're approaching the General Assembly, where all eyes will be focused on the UN building in New York and all of the political activity that is going on here. But it's also civil society that is coming out. It's really an issue-focused week this time, and it's all being driven by a lot of young people who've taken to the streets and have said, we want action on climate change and for our planet. And so that's why the Secretary General decided to convene a summit on climate change, and also a summit just for youth, just for young people. And so we're going to be seeing a lot of not just speeches, and this is what the Secretary General has said, please, especially to the leaders of the world coming to the climate summit, if you want to speak at our climate summit, the condition is that you don't just come with a beautiful speech, but you come with an action plan.
So climate change, clearly a priority for the United Nations. What are the other priorities?
Well, obviously, peace and security, as ever before. The Secretary General has said not only is the climate warming, but so is the political climate. And so you have, and sometimes they converge, like when you look at the Sahel. And so we need to be focusing not only on the environmental aspects of the urgency of what's happening in our planet, but also on the political side, on peace and security. How can we address the conflicts that are sometimes interlinked with the environment, but in any case causing a lot of destruction, a lot of misery in our world.
Yes, there certainly is a deep connection between climate change and, I guess, security in the world right now.
There has been, some evidence that has linked, sometimes more directly than in other times, climate change to instability and even to conflict. In any case, it is also related to more and more people being uprooted just because they can no longer live in their communities and in their homes. And that is another challenge beyond the conflict-driven refugees that we have in the world.
On the issue of climate change and the role of young people, I mean, we've seen a passion among young people recently that we've not seen on many issues previously. So clearly the message is getting through, isn't it?
Yeah, the message is getting through, and they are delivering a message too. I think the message came through that they are scared. They are really worried about what's happening to this planet. And they're not going to wait for their future. They're saying their future has arrived, it's now. But the people who are responsible for their future are their parents and their grandparents, and these are the people in power. And what they're saying to the people in power, or the people who are running businesses, who are running energy companies, that actually, what we care, and we're the people that you're responsible for. So it's actually incredibly inspiring. I think so many people are motivated, but even, it's having a remarkable influence on governments and policies, and also even on business. Business, these are the future customers of businesses, but also the future employees. And I think young people are also demanding to work for businesses that believe in a sustainable planet and not in, exploitation or destruction of our planet.
All right, and when you talk about the influence you hope it will have on governments, what is the message you're hoping? I mean, there'll be hundreds of delegates here at the UN General Assembly. What is the message that you hope they will take back with them?
From the youth?
Well, from the youth and from the UN General Assembly as well, on the issue of climate change.
I mean, I think what we're really hoping this year is that it's, it is always very useful to bring people together during this so-called high-level week, leaders, civil society, other, influencers in our society. But I think what's different from previous years, particularly in the Climate Action Summit, is the urgency that's being felt, the markers that need to be, shifted. And so I really believe that, the message is going to be clear to all. We need action, and we need it now and immediate, and in very many directions if we're going to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement, and if we're going to save our planet.
I want to focus on something else right now, something that you will be very familiar with, and that is the refugee situation around the world. You were previously the head of communications and chief spokesperson at the UN Refugee Agency. How do you see the refugee situation right now, given that it's coming at a time when there's growing sentiment around the world against migrants? We see it in Europe, we see it in the United States as well.
Yeah, well, we just in June released the annual figures at UNHCR, and again, the numbers had gone up, exponentially from the previous year of people who have been forcibly displaced. And these are refugees and internally displaced people who've had to flee their homes because of conflict or persecution. This is different from people who are migrating, also for compelling reasons, but these are to be distinguished under international law as conflict refugees. The numbers are growing, and the places, the countries, the borders that they can turn to cross and to feel safe and to be welcomed are shrinking or closing. And this is extremely worrying. We've done a lot of surveys, and in places where governments are even hostile towards refugees. And when we ask people, if somebody is fleeing war or persecution, do you believe that person should be able to seek asylum in your country? And virtually all of them say yes. So I think what's really important is that we understand what they're afraid of. There are genuine fears, and we need to understand what they are and address them. Unfortunately, there are those who do very well understand the fears of the people, and they exploit those fears with misinformation and populist lies sometimes about who these people are and why they're coming. So we need a different narrative and to humanize the numbers, and that's what I tried to do during my time at UNHCR and will continue to do.
And is that message getting through to people when you say you humanize it, when they see the face of what this is?
I think that's another way effective communications is possible. We had a policy of not just providing statistics, because refugees do often flee in large numbers, and there's a saying, statistics are human beings with the tears dried off, which is really true. I mean, this is how, when people, and social psychologists will confirm this, when people are faced with huge, numbers, either they feel numb, just because the suffering is so great they don't know how to deal with it, or they feel afraid and shut off. So But if you tell one individual story, a human story, and refugee stories are so remarkable. I mean, just what they had to flee, what they survived, and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. I wished there are over 70 million people forcibly displaced in our world today. I wish I could tell every one of those stories, but we told many of them, and I know that we changed hearts and minds and even, moved policies for the better of refugees.
And getting to those conflicts that you talk about, these conflicts from which people are fleeing, I mean, it gets back to the traditional role that the United Nations has played for so long, which is in resolving conflicts, preventing them from happening in the future. There's still great areas of tension around the world. We see it in the Middle East, we see it in some Latin American countries. We've got those nuclear tensions on the Korean Peninsula. So what role does the UN play in resolving those today?
Well, the UN plays an important role in peace and security, in mediation. The good offices of the Secretary General are there to resolve and to help resolve conflicts. We have UN peacekeeping to stabilize. So, do we have a lot of conflicts that have been going on for years and years unresolved? Yes. But I wouldn't like to see what the world would look like without a United Nations being there, playing roles day in and day out, trying to get parties together, trying to negotiate peace, helping the people who are the victims of the conflicts, and convening in political gatherings like we have here in New York. There's a long way to go. There is a lot of conflict in this world. I know it keeps our Secretary General awake at night, but it's what we have. It's the best of what we have.
Melissa, thanks so much for joining us.
It was a great pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. That's it for this special edition of The Heat. I'm Anand, Naidoo in New York. Thanks for watching. Hello everybody, I'm Anand Naidoo. If you enjoy the thoughtful, engaged discussions you see on The Heat, you may also want to subscribe to our podcast. It's appropriately titled The Heat. Twice a week we take a deep dive on world headlines, talking to experts, journalists and others. It's a fresh, focused and intimate look at the issues that matter most. Whether it's the Hong Kong riots, the latest Middle East conflict or US politics, The Heat podcast gives the clear context needed to understand both what's going on and why. And what's best, we come to you. Whether you're at home or on the go, you can find The Heat podcast just about anywhere podcasts are found. Just search The Heat CGTN. Have a listen today and subscribe. Thanks.